So explain your business exactly. You've got customers, you've got 9,000 restaurants. Where do you come in?
Yeah, so what we realized about 7 years ago when we started is that the national chains, the Domino's, the Starbucks, the Chipotle's, were rolling out mobile apps, seeing very quick success. You can look at the Domino's stock chart. You've seen the success they've had over the past decade. And if you're a small mom and pop restaurant, local restaurant, small regional group, you had nowhere to turn. You had marketplaces out there. You had a Grubhub, Seamless, those type of business models, which are okay for customer acquisition, but given the nature of to-go and takeout and carry-out, it's usually the same customers ordering again and again and again. And if you're a mom and pop, there's no way you can have your own mobile app. There's no way you can have online ordering on your website. And so we created a system that empowers restaurants to have their own system so they could bypass and they're not solely reliant and at the mercy of something like Grubhub.
So you don't actually deliver the food?
We don't. We're the software provider.
If I'm a customer, I have to figure out how to get the food.
Yes.
How many employees do you have?
We're about 160.
How difficult is it for you to get people with the right skill set for your particular business?
It depends. It's kind of like real estate. You know, everyone says the real estate market when it's really just many markets collected. And so not everything's created equal. So we hired roughly about 75 people last year, of which we had 5,000 people apply for.
Wow.
Wow.
And so there are a number of jobs that we're able to fill, and we had many people wanting those positions. And yet we had to go out and hire outside recruiters to hire engineers because engineers were not part of the 5,000. So it depends on what you're looking to hire for. So
how potentially disruptive is your business really? Because I talked to Danny Meyer recently about this, and he thinks that we're really going to have increasingly people ordering things to be delivered rather than going to restaurants. The restaurants, they won't go out of business, but you have a lot less of them, less space.
Sure, and delivery is definitely hot right now. One thing that people don't talk much about is the fact that billions of dollars have flown in, moved in from investors. So Uber has raised a tremendous amount of money for Uber Eats. Grubhub's obviously publicly traded. DoorDash has raised $500 million on top of the $200 million that they've raised. And so that is going to pay for some of this delivery. And so we haven't seen the true cost of the actual delivery because a lot of these deliveries, these thousands and thousands of deliveries every single day are partly paid for by the investor. When we actually see what happens when these companies actually have to break even or make a profit, we'll see what's the true cost of this delivery and is it as hot as it has been for the last 2 years.
So what about this potential transformation, really where we do less eating in a restaurant and get it delivered? What could that do to the job market?
You know, it's fascinating. It reminds me a little bit of the way driverless cars are going to change the way we build homes. Maybe we won't need to put kitchens in homes, or the kitchens will be much smaller if it's easier to have food delivered and get takeout. You know, my guess is the first order effect is this is just increasing demand for restaurants, which is positive for the restaurant sector because more people are getting restaurant prepared meals as opposed to making their own food. Then it can change, as you were saying, David, it could change the nature of restaurants. It could lead more people preparing food and fewer people serving. Although I suspect a lot of people go to restaurants for the experience, not just for the food. So one thing I'm curious about is, how many of the people are doing this are going just to save time at lunch? I don't like going and queuing up. And I'll go pick up my sandwich. I just don't like spending 20 minutes while they make it.
You pick up your own sandwich?
Of course.
And sometimes you don't need to have delivery. It's downstairs. I order all the time for pickup at our office in Los Angeles because the restaurant I eat at 3 times a week is 500 feet from us. I'm not going to pay $6 to have it delivered, a few hundred feet. And so pickup's actually a very big use case that people don't talk about. Delivery is hot right now, but the fact that 70% of our orders are actually for pickup or carry out, especially in cities like New York, where you can just on your way out the door can pick up your food or on your way home. We believe that restaurants clearly it's a hospitality industry. You go out, you want to interact with people. There's been examples where restaurants have tried to go 100% kind of robots, and they haven't worked out so well. There's a company out of San Francisco called Itza that tried to create this restaurant that had no humans up front. Everything was behind the scenes. It was a little Wizard of Oz, so there were some humans behind the scenes, but you never actually interacted, and they didn't last very long because you like the interaction with people, and we believe that. We think technology makes people more efficient at the restaurants. So when you're calling on a Friday night and as a consumer you put on hold and you have to wait for a few minutes, it's not a good experience. For the restaurant staff, it's not good. You're stressed. You're constantly putting people on hold. And you actually have what happens is orders online tend to be larger because people have time to actually place it and view the menu, which is the exact opposite of what you get on a Friday night, where the staff is trying to get you off the phone as quick as possible to pick up so it's not a good experience, but we still love the fact that there's people in restaurants.
I did want to touch on, though, the job mismatch that you spoke about earlier, that you needed engineers. So if you need to get them, do you have to pay up for them?
Yeah, there's definitely wage inflation within that kind of community. We do. It's competitive out there. It's competitive. There's a lot of startups raising a lot of money. There's a lot of the big companies, the Amazons of the world, who are also moving in and expanding into multiple cities. Clearly, they're talking about their second headquarters, but they're also expanding in Los Angeles and these other cities with smaller offices, but still large nonetheless.
So, Alan, there's wage inflation, but it isn't everywhere. As a practical matter, you've got a study out from Brookings Institution that really talks about the power of the employer versus the employee and how the employee is at a disadvantage right now.
The labor market has been evolving and not in favor of workers by and large. With the decline in unions and increase in franchises, for example, many franchise companies have agreements that one franchisee can't hire workers away from another in the same chain, which limits mobility. A quarter of workers, over 20% of workers with a high school degree or less, are required to sign non-compete agreements, which makes it harder for them to go out and find other employment. So a lot of these practices have been constraining workers' opportunities, and I think have been holding down wage growth in this recovery.
Yeah. One of my concerns is the movement to 1099 workers within the restaurant industry. Clearly a big shift. And so to me, that's essentially a loophole within the system that I think should be fixed. As minimum wage goes up in many markets, California, New York, probably a number of others, to $15 in the next couple of years, I tend to think it's good for restaurants. I know you've done a lot of work around that prove that that's the case. My concern is that restaurants actually get around it by actually sourcing out to these 1099 couriers and things like that, where MIT had the study out last week that showed the average wage for Uber or Lyft driver is $3 when you include all the costs, the gas, and everything else that goes. So that's my concern, and I hope that gets fixed at some point. Not that I think it needs to be wiped out. I just think there's some kind of loopholes there that need to be kind of addressed.